So we are live today with a Micro moment. Thank you for joining us out there, Facebook land. I am here with Deborah Kapoor. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So we are live at the Suzanne Zahr Gallery on Mercer Island. Excuse me. If you haven't been to the Suzanne Zahr Gallery, this is an amazing place. I like to consider this the Coco Chanel atelier of Mercer Island, but yet it's Suzanne Zahr, and instead of clothing, she's doing some great art and some architecture. So it's marvelous. So today we're talking with Deborah, and she has a gallery here that's going till the end of the month, and it's entitled Into the Pink. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, Into the Pink. So I just wanted to talk a little about this, what we call this, a gallery?
Installation.
An installation. So we're calling this an installation. And Deborah is an artist that works with Encaustic. So I'd like to start there and talk about what Encaustic is for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, encaustic is the most ancient form of painting, and it is a paint that's made from beeswax with resin. And the resin gives it a little bit more substance so it doesn't get chipped and it's not so vulnerable. And then you mix that with pigment to give it color.
Okay.
And that's a form of hot molten paint that you put on a surface and heat it. And as you put it on another surface, it dries and you reheat it and fuse it to create what is called encaustic, which means to burn in.
Okay. And how long have you been working with Encaustic?
It's been about 15 years. Scary to say that. But yeah, it's an amazing material, unlike any paint that I've ever worked with.
So I would usually go to a bunch of different questions here, but let's show our viewers what Encaustic looks like. So we have a piece right back here. And so explain to us what we're looking at as far as the materials that you have used.
This is a different form of using encaustic. It really likes porous surfaces and things that it can seep into. And this is actually a piece that was made from clay, and it was originally inspired by a piece of lace that I formed with slip and then fired, and the fiber burned away, leaving the residue or the bones of the lace as a structure, in which I've treated the surface with encaustic. And I recently was able to hook up with Pat Collier, who is an instructor in ceramics at Kirkland Art Center and at Bellevue College. And she and I have been working together, team teaching a class called Encaustic and Clay. And she's helping me with the clay part, and I'm helping her with the encaustic part. And it's been a really amazing journey and experimentation, if you will, with that kind of material, and some really fun results that are in this show.
Yeah, and this is a really great show here at the Suzanne Zahr Gallery, if you can come down. The title of it is Into the Pink. And I want to talk a little bit about the title. I'm going to read here, Into the Pink, a contemporary cabinet of curiosities installation with themes of containment, accumulation, and feminine persistence in an ever-changing world. So can you speak a little bit about the words containment, accumulation, and feminine persistence, and how you came about with this installation?
Well, I recently moved into a new house that had pink walls and pink carpeting. And at first I was a little put off by the color, but then I realized, I should just go with it. And so I started thinking about different symbologies related to pink. And around that time, Trump was elected. And around that time, I was introduced to Suzanne and invited to show here. And in seeing the space, I realized there was this incredible cabinet that you see behind us, that instead of thinking about how I would try to mask the cabinet, which was my initial reaction, frankly, I thought, no, you should go with the cabinet and think about what you might create to go in the cabinet. And then I was reminded of cabinets of curiosities from art history, and it sort of spurred the idea, along with the ceramic experimentation, to just sort of go for it. And again, with Trump being elected, it made me start thinking about different things that relate to being a woman in our contemporary culture. things that made me really angry. And it made me think about how women are often contained. And so a lot of the imagery and ways of presenting the works show objects that are within a certain framework of being contained. And even though things are much better for women than they were, we've got a long way to go. And
can you give an example of that containment, of how you utilized to symbolize the containment within your art in some of these pieces? If you can see up behind us, this is all of Deborah's art. And I don't know, maybe you can just point to a piece or something.
On the top, you can see a framework of a house, which is like a mini house form with a roof there. And there are different flowers that have been compressed. There's sculptural forms that have been dipped in wax in encaustic. And the title is Acquisitions and Memory. And I was in the midst of moving, and I was thinking about all the things that you acquire, you know, just over time, and the memories that you have within it. But as a woman, you know, being sort of the head of household in a way, and ideas related to how those duties keep you within a certain kind of containment about how you spend your time. And even though I enjoy that domestic life, it also holds you back from pursuing other things.
Okay.
So there's sort of a duality there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I usually I go big and then go small with my questions. I wanted to get across encaustic to everyone, and so people would have a good understanding of what we're talking about. But I kind of want to go back and just talk about your creative process as an artist. And so, what does a typical day for you look like in your studio? What's your creative process?
Well, I am the mother of a teenage boy. So my schedule kind of flows around him. I also teach, so I incorporate that into my day usually. It depends on the body of work, but often I begin with gathering information. I'll get a seedling of an idea. It could be something from a conversation or a dream or a performance, or it could come from anywhere really. And I'll start reading usually about something related to a general concept of something I'm wanting to delve into. And then I'll start exploring materials and looking around for things that might lend themselves to that form of relating that idea. And gathering. I think of it as a gathering stage. And I give myself a lot of leeway there to be anything. And there's no wrong answer. And accumulating things, and then I start playing around in the studio. And I do have two studios, one on Mercer Island and one in Seattle.
Oh, I didn't know you had one on Mercer Island.
And depending on what works I'm doing, I'll divide my tasks up related to the space.
Okay.
So I do a lot of cutting, I do assembling, I do painting, I do sewing, I do calligraphy, I do a lot of different things. So often, again, as a mother, I have to structure my time really carefully, and I will think, okay, I'm going to do 3 hours of this, and then just sort of crank out whatever I can.
Yeah. We had talked earlier about a lot of stuff. It was fun talking ahead of time, and I wish we had that on tape. But
I know, it's always the good conversation.
It is. But, you know, I was asking you about parameters of your art, and do you feel like that you kind of have this endless space of creation that you go and go and go, or do you set parameters for yourself at the beginning and end, like as far as time or length or height or something, any type of parameter that you could put on it? How does your creative process work in that way?
I usually, like I said before, give a lot of time in the beginning to endless creativity, and anything goes. And there's no wrong way of doing something, and just trying this and trying that. And I actually have a high rate of failure because I work with such a, delicate material, and especially the way that I use it, it's often very fragile. And so I'm kind of pushing that limit of what can I do with it that shows that sort of vulnerability of being human.
Yeah.
I think it's where we're the strongest and the weakest at the same time. And I give myself a lot of leeway in that zone. But then as I move toward a goal, like in this case it was a deadline for a show, then I get tighter. You know, like, all right, you're done with that. Time's up. This is what you're doing.
Yeah. Do you tend to come back to pieces after you've said that they're finished?
Not so much individual pieces, but perhaps bodies of work I might revisit. Most of them still have resonance for me, everything I've ever done. And I sort of think of them as open-ended, not necessarily in terms of a finite piece, but as a concept or an idea. Yeah.
How does, if it does at all, does classical technique come into your work?
I use some elements of classical technique, like layering and underpainting and glazes, but not so much in terms of highlights and shadow and chiaroscuro and dimensional perspective. I use those things in teaching, but not so much do they apply to my own work.
Do you think that the foundation of art, though, is really important in the work that you've done, even if you don't utilize those techniques?
Sure, I'm sure it's in there.
Yeah. It's always hard to kind of figure out where it happens.
Where it stops and starts.
Yeah, exactly. I always sort of think about it as, you know, if you're proficient at something or you're technically, you can break the rules. You know, after you've learned the rules, you can then break them.
Right.
And then you never know, though, when you're using the technique and the rules that you think you broke.
You move in and out.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I have this one question. Oh, so you teach a lot. You teach at Bellevue College, correct? And also at Aljoya, right across the street.
I do.
And we were just talking about that. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you do at Aljoya? And first, let me say that Aljoya is a retirement community here on Mercer Island. I think one of 3 or 4. And I'm over there quite often, and they have a wonderful art gallery themselves, but you do some teaching, so tell us about what you do.
They are a very dynamic group that I work with watercolor. And, you know, I try as a teacher to work really individually with people to help them realize their individual goals. Everyone's at their own place of where, you know, in terms of experience or what they've done to date. And I operate by going around the room and talking to them and asking a lot of questions as I get to know them. And I ask for them to be driven in their own content and bring in ideas so that I can help them realize their ideas through watercolor.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many people are usually in some of your classes?
It varies at locations from about 5 to maybe about 12.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty hands-on. And I like the fact that the classes are small because it allows me the opportunity to really spend time with someone and not be rushed.
So throughout your creative career as an artist, you've been teaching at the same time. Do you feel that your students have impressed upon you anything in your art, changed the way you've looked at art, changed your artistic the way you create, or anything of that sort?
I think that they remind me of things often, is how I would look at it. I'm like, oh yeah, contrast. Oh yeah, texture, or whatever it is. It's very inspiring to me to teach. And I think about it all the time. Just today I was in class across the street and I brought in this very fat book of the history of watercolor, and I was sharing some things from that book with them, and it's just a meaningful way of reminding myself of the history of art and things that you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm a musician, and having taught younger students, I always say to myself, well, I hate teaching, but that's never the case. I always love teaching. It always makes me realize what I didn't know or how to get something across, and I'm always a better musician after that, even though I don't play as much. I kind of want to move us kind of here towards the end, but to this piece we have in Suzanne Zahr's gallery.
Cool.
What's the name of this piece?
Perfect Imperfect.
Perfect Imperfect. And so we're going to pan the camera over to this piece right here. And I think what I found fascinating is when I came in here yesterday to look at your work more, I saw this piece online, but it didn't look like this.
It has a new life.
It has a new life. So
Yeah.
first, what is this made of?
This is made from clay, although it looks like hardened lace. And this was the process I was talking about earlier where you use slip, and in the firing process, the fibers burn away, leaving the residue, or the skeleton really, of the structure of the fiber, but it is now clay.
So previously, I'm going to kind of get up and,
Yeah, go
get
ahead.
into the. So previously, this looked like lace that was hanging over
Correct.
the pedestal. So it had an unfortunate incident happen to it throughout, I don't know what evening this week, but we can turn the camera to us. But what I find interesting about this piece and what we've been talking about is I kind of like to think about art on this time plane, this plane of time that can be continuous as it goes. It can go backwards or it can go forward.
Have a new life.
Yeah, have a new life. And this piece has this new life.
Well, it was unexpected, and I was, the whole process of making it to begin with was fairly experimental, and I wasn't sure in the various transportation that it would make it even to the gallery because it was incredibly fragile. But
And we didn't know how to get this over here either, so we were really scared. We didn't want to move it.
But that's what I kind of loved about it. And when I first made it, it came out perfectly out of the kiln, and I couldn't believe it. And then I had to transport the piece home before I treated it with Encaustic. And my husband drove, and my son and I held the piece in the air, and it was heavy for quite a distance, and there were bumps along the way. And as we were driving, little bits of it would crumble and fall off, and at first I was mortified, like, oh my God, it came out of the kiln perfectly, and then it's coming apart. But then I thought it was such a great metaphor for life, and that things don't always go exactly as you plan, and that imperfection is our humanity.
Right.
And so I kind of embraced that, and even in its earlier rendition when we displayed it here, it had some parts that were broken off, and that sort of led to the title of Perfect Imperfect. And it is kind of its own perfection in its imperfection.
It is.
And then someone was cleaning in the gallery and, of course, accidentally bumped into it, and it sort of fell into this position, and it has another iteration, another life. And so,
It's just amazing how pieces of art can take on these other iterations, these other life, as they go into the future.
They're great teachers of humility.
Yeah, I was really taken by it. I came in here and I was looking for that piece. The first iteration, and I couldn't find it. And I figured, well, that looks like the same piece, but not the same piece. But I still really liked it, and I still was drawn to how it was with the pieces on the side of the pedestal. There was still something that drew me to it.
I love the metaphor.
Yeah.
I really do. And I love the delicacy and the strength of it at the same time.
Yeah, it's really great. Well, I'm going to wrap it up right there.
Okay.
I really think that this is a great installation. If you haven't come down to see Suzanne Zahr's gallery, come down to Suzanne's. If you haven't seen Deborah Kapoor's installation, we're only here for another week and a half. Yeah, so come on down to Suzanne's, see Deborah's stuff. Only here for one more week or a week and a half until the end of this month.
I think it's through July 3rd-ish.
July 3rd-ish.
Yes.
So put it on your calendars. But thank you for being here at one of our Micro Mica moments, and thank you for being with us, Deborah. It's nice meeting you.
I appreciate it so much.
All right, we'll see you guys later. We'll be at the Farmers Market this Sunday at the Mica booth if you'd like to come visit us. Thanks to Suzanne, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.